now I'm even more intrigued by you now that I know that you're sailing across the world from New Zealand, currently in Spain, and have your yacht in Italy. All of this sounds so grand and phenomenal. Liam, why don't you introduce yourself to my listeners so that they know who I'm talking to today? I'm really excited to have you here.
Oh, thanks very much, Maggie. Thanks for having me. Well, I guess you could say I'm a global explorer, but apart from physically exploring, I've always been intrigued to find the answer to the question is why do we get the results we do in our life? Because for a lot of my life, I got terrible results. And now I'm getting quite good results. As you mentioned, I'm a sailor and a nomad, and for the last few years, I really have just been following the wind, following my nose, and having some amazing experiences and running my business and ideas from anywhere where I am, and not really
Yeah.
having the problems and stress and frustration that for a lot of my life was always there. So that's really what I'm on about, is trying to figure out, how do we get the results we do, good and bad, and is there a way to actually get more of the good and less of the bad? And what I discovered was something quite different to, your average personal development, goal
Right.
setting, peak performance, change your beliefs sort of approach, because I tried all those things and they didn't work for me and for not many other people that I was observing either. So I thought I need to figure out how we really operate, how we really do get what we get in our life. And so
Right.
that's what I do and help people really get on track with their own lives.
Yeah, because I did read on your profile that you were one of those people who were very career focused, very on the grind, and wanting that. Was it $1 million company situation where the hunt for all of that just revealed what was missing in your life? And I was wondering if we could go deeper into that. Like, what was that discovery like, and what needed to change? What did you actually do to now feel peaceful and happy, it seems like?
Well, it was really strange because, yes, I became very successful as a businessman and a millionaire and had my own businesses. And I've always been entrepreneurial. I've had 18 different businesses throughout my
Wow.
life at last count. Some of them successful, others not. But the thing that bothered me was I was always so stressed. I always had so many problems. And life became this sort of roller coaster of it's like the more successful you become, the more problems you have to deal with.
Right.
And I thought, and I bought into that whole idea that, stress and problems, that's the price you pay for success. Because I did a lot of seminars and workshops and read a lot of books with all of the gurus who tell you that life is difficult, life is hard, and
Yeah.
don't think that a life without problems is achievable.
Mm.
In fact, I sort of thought, someone who says they don't have problems, that's just a cop out. Because I'd met people as well who say, no, I have this wonderful life and I have no problems. But they were denying the truth about themselves. Really, it was just covering up for a fear that they had of actually facing life head on.
Mm.
And more, it was a justification for not taking action and not really finding fulfillment and trying to convince themselves that they were somehow having this really happy life when they really didn't. So I
Right.
didn't want to go down that track either. But I tried all of these things and I became successful and I had a lot of money and a lot of freedom and all of these things. But something happened quite quickly, and that is I actually lost it all. I became homeless, and I
Mm.
was in my mid 40s. I wasn't a young person. I was thinking, how am I going to rebuild from this? I haven't got much time left.
Oh my goodness.
But I literally became homeless. I had to move back in with my elderly mother
Oh wow.
and sleep on the sofa in her living room for a while. And I thought, I started off going down the same track I'd always gone down. I sat down with everything I knew about how you don't get in that situation, even though I'd ended up there. And I thought, I need to set some goals. I
Right.
need to develop some strategies. I need to learn some things. I need
Right.
to have a plan. I need to go after every single opportunity that I can possibly find. I need to get out and hustle and, meet people and connect and do all of these things and have this clear, super action-based plan. I need to figure out more about what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, what am I, what am I good at, what am I not good at, what are my values. I need to
Mm.
figure out all of these things and I need to take this massive action because
Mm.
that's what all of the books had said. That's what success, where success comes from. So I
Right.
did all of that and I tried to analyze what do I do now and have all these plans. And I tried all sorts of things. But here's the thing, nothing actually worked. It
Mm.
didn't get me off the sofa and it didn't make me feel any better. But I was taking so much action. I was so motivated because, when you haven't got anything, particularly when you've just come from millionaire status, you're pretty
Mhm.
motivated to get back on your feet.
Yeah.
But I thought, why isn't any of this working? Why am I still so confused? Why don't I know what to do? And the other thing I didn't know was what was actually going on. Why had this happened to me? I was an expert in success. As I say,
Right.
I'd read all the books, I'd done all the workshops, I had all the vision boards and I'd done the subliminal changing your beliefs and rewiring your subconscious mind. And I'd done all that sort of thing,
Mm.
meditation, visualization, affirmations, getting clear, super clear. I had my goals list. I knew exactly what I wanted for my life, but none of that worked, and it wasn't on my goals list to actually lose everything and end up on my
No,
dear
I
mother's
suppose not.
sofa. So, you know what I thought? I thought I literally exhausted every idea I could think of. And
Mm.
I did the only thing that I was left with. And it was really ironic that the one thing I hadn't tried was the thing that worked. And the thing I hadn't tried was actually to do nothing, was actually to say, I accept I don't know what to do. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this mess. And what I didn't realize was that created a huge shift, not in a sort of a spiritual way, but I didn't understand it then, but it shifted the way I was using my brain. And I'd overlooked all of those years the fact that we're biological. We have a brain that's designed to operate in a certain way. And I didn't realize that all of this pushing and striving is not how your brain is designed to work. So
Mm.
when I actually just gave it all up
Mm.
and said, I don't care what happens, I'm at rock bottom. Anything is better than nothing. Nothing works. Nothing will work. I give up. And then what I did was, as I say, a shift. We could talk about what that brain shift actually is, because I help
Yeah.
people now to be more conscious about what's going on when you do this.
Yeah.
Because we've all heard about letting go and having faith and,
Surrender.
allowing,
Yeah.
but we don't understand what that is. And that's why we don't really do it. Most people
Right.
say, I let go, but what they're really saying is, I'll let go, but I'll keep checking as to whether I'm getting what I want. That's not letting go. And because they don't really let go, it doesn't work. They tell themselves they're letting go. What they're saying is, I want to let go. I want to believe.
Yeah.
I
No,
want to
for sure.
trust myself, but they're not doing it. But I literally did, on a biological level, get to the point where I just gave up. And instead of having all my plans and all of these things, I just followed my nose. I just did the next thing that showed up. So I'd have an idea, I'll ring that person. And I didn't even know why I was ringing them when I dialed the number, but somehow I said some words that turned out to be the right words. So I just followed my nose and then everything started to shift. And
Mm.
all of these coincidences, and again, I don't want this to sound sort of woo-woo because this is biological, what was actually happening. But things started to fall into place and I started to meet the right people and opportunities showed up. And before I knew it, I was doing nothing that was on my goals list ever. I'd never dreamt that I'd be sailing the world on my own yacht and managing businesses and even talking to people like you about this sort of stuff. It
Yeah.
was never on a goals list.
Yeah.
But just by following my nose, following my instinct, and taking one step at a time and thinking, I'll try that, I'll do that, not even thinking that much, just doing it
Yeah.
and seeing what showed up, that's when everything shifted.
Yeah. So from chasing and doing everything to stopping, like you essentially paused and said, "Wait, hold up." And I think what's remarkable about what you're saying is the kind of links that I'm creating in terms of attachment theory is also that there's kind of this notion that once you no longer strive for it, it shows up in your life. But I think also there's this component of when you are under the belief that you need to earn it to have it, that's also a part of the striving. I know that what I've realized in my own life lately, and I can tie these connections, is that when I no longer think that I have to strive to earn what it is that I want, that just simply by being alive, I am worthy of having everything that I want, essentially, in terms of happiness, in terms of peace, in terms of having love, and a sort of like financial stability. You know what I mean? It's like it's as if all of that follows the moment I stop clinging to it. So I'm very curious to hear what is actually happening in my brain, and I would love for you to explain that to both me and to the listeners.
Well, here's just what you were talking about is really interesting because if you think, you mentioned this word think. Now, what is thinking? Because we think that we need to think to make things happen. But if you think about, and if anyone listening or watching is thinking about, when are the moments in my life when I felt most alive? When are the moments when I truly felt in the flow, if you like?
Yeah,
We use this expression in the flow, and often
right.
it's if it's the feeling, if you have, I don't know if you have children, but
I don't.
um, well, when my daughter was born, this feeling of love and wonder was something I couldn't describe in words.
Right.
But probably the best example is love itself. Now, if you were to ask anybody in the world what is love, nobody can give you a definition.
Mm.
If I came to you and said, "What is love? Tell me the definition of love," you would just say, "Well, I can't really define it." I mean, you could try and describe it, describe situations in which you felt love, but love ultimately is something you can't describe. It's just that none of us can describe it. And, people throughout the centuries have written about it, written music about it, done art to try and describe and reflect this thing we call love. But
Mm.
none of them have come close to describing what love is. So we can't describe it in words. We can't think a description of love, but we all know it. We all know, if you say what was a moment when you felt love, you can instantly recall it and go, I can't describe it. It's indescribable. It doesn't have there are no words to describe this feeling I had of what love is. And the point I'm really making is what was happening in that time when you felt love or you felt true, just great about your life,
Hmm.
gratitude, you were looking at a sunrise or a sunset, or you're with somebody
Hmm.
special and you were sharing a moment and you just felt this wave of gratitude, love, faith, if you
Yeah.
like. What's the one thing that all of these things have in common? There are no words. That's the thing. There is no thinking involved. So our highest function, when we're functioning at our highest self, we're not actually thinking at all. And this is what meditation, mindfulness, and all these things are trying to point to, is that the highest functioning of the human brain is when what happens when you stop thinking, when you're not trying to find words to describe things.
Right.
And I thought,
When you're just
that
present, essentially, when you're just focusing on the now, is that what you're alluding to?
yeah, it's not even a focus. This
Okay.
is what letting go is.
I'm
You
like, wait,
stop
hold up. Is there
thinking.
a difference between the male and the female brain? Is what I'm thinking now. Just because I'm like, I am very much capable of thinking, but maybe there's something that I'm misunderstanding.
Well, we're all capable of thinking, but what the problem is we think that thinking is going to help us figure out and sort out our life. Whereas,
Right.
have you also noticed that the things that happen to you in your life aren't the things that you really plan for? They're the
Yeah.
unexpected things.
Uh-huh.
I've one of the reasons I stopped trying to plan life beyond sailing, if you like, is
It's
because
true.
whenever I made a plan, things changed. Something came
Yeah,
along,
you're right.
an opportunity came along. You met somebody you end up marrying, for instance, and you go, how did I ever meet them? It wasn't on the plan. They
Yes.
just showed up. So the problem and if you think about it, we live in an age, we have more information, more thinking, more solutions to problems, more ideas, all at our fingertips, and yet we're
Yeah.
all stuck. Everybody's
Yeah.
stuck. Everybody's feeling frustrated. Everybody's feeling stressed and thinking, I need to try and figure out a better way to get me into this feeling that I want of not being stuck, not being stressed, being
Yeah.
clear about my life, living what I glimpse occasionally is that being in the flow, being in the zone, feeling like I truly am alive. I'm being my best. I'm living my purpose. I've found my purpose.
Mm.
But all of these things you don't find by looking for them. You don't find your purpose by trying to figure it out. And the reason is, and this comes back to biology, if you look at, and just a slight little history lesson here, but one
Yeah.
thing I realized was the human brain, when it evolved, and the oldest humans have been around for about, we've got records going back about 300,000 years.
Right.
That's how old the human species is. For most of that time, we didn't think. We lived like all of the rest of nature, purely on instinct.
Ah.
So our brain developed to respond through our five senses to the information it's getting through our five senses to
Mhm.
what's happening right now, not through thought.
Right.
Because if you think about it, so your brain, and we live perfectly for hundreds of thousands of years, like the rest of nature lives perfectly, through instinct, through not using thought. So when thought came along, and there was actually a development of something that caused us to start thinking.
Yeah, what was
But
it?
well, it's the development of language. We didn't
Oh.
have language before. For most of human history, we haven't had
Huh.
language. We haven't had words. We haven't been able to label things and describe things. But it's a bit like love. What happens when you label something or you describe it? You're not connecting with it. You're trying to interpret it in a certain way. You're actually telling a story about something. You're not experiencing it directly. That's why we experience love directly. We say it's beyond words. There's no way of describing this experience. That's your brain tapping into the present moment through your five senses to make sure that you do and have the right things there for you to make sure you survive. Because that
Right.
was the whole reason why we evolved, like every other creature, to live through our instincts, not our thoughts, because our instincts are immediate, they're real. If something's there right in front of you, it's the most efficient way and most effective way for you to survive is to respond to that. We all know the fight flight instinct.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If a lion comes out of the bushes towards you, your instinct is to jump out of the way or shout for help or run away. It's
Yeah.
not to sit down and say, I need to create a strategic plan on how to deal with this lion. It's inefficient. It doesn't work. We'd be dead if we lived on thought for most of our history.
Wow.
Instinct is the way we're designed. But the problem was when we developed language, when we created words, yes, it has advantages. Obviously, we can communicate, we can plan, we can do all those things,
Yeah.
but it took us away from instinct. And
Mm.
instead of, the problem for our brain is designed to respond to what's here, and it can deal with what's here. If you're having a conversation with somebody, if you trust and allow that the right words are going to come out, you're going to have a good conversation. But if you're trying to figure out what should I say next, what does it mean what they're saying? This is where conflicts in relationships happen so much because people are busy trying to interpret what the other person is saying, or they're trying to make sure that they say the right words so that the other person gets what they're trying to say.
Right.
What you're actually doing is instead of responding directly to what is, you're responding to a story, to an idea, to your imagination, creating something else. You're not actually there. And your brain can't deal with an imaginary story.
Right.
Partly it thinks it's real, but the other problem is it doesn't have all the information. So it can't help you make the right decision. It can't help you do the right thing. So you're off busy creating a story in your head about what you should do and what it means and what you need to say and what the other person needs to do, whatever the scenario is, or
Yeah.
for your life, what my life needs to look like. And your brain is saying, hang on, I can only deal with what's here. And if you're going to give me a scenario of the other problem with a story is we always think something's going to go wrong. And our brain is designed to protect us from danger. Now, that's fine if there's a lion in front of you, but what happens if you give your brain the task that it has to solve every imaginable possible problem that could ever happen to you before you can be happy?
Oh my
That's what we're
goodness.
doing.
Wow. I'm so intrigued. I actually read a book that there's this hypochondria doctor that I read a book of. He's Norwegian. It was super funny because he kind of put it in the same way that we're all trying to prepare for all the worst case scenarios, thinking that somehow it's going to alleviate some pain from the present moment if that should
Mm.
happen. Like it's not true. But so what in ways in which that we are actually just standing in our own way? Like how can people rewire their brains so that it's acting in alignment with people?
Well, this is really what I help people do because people are stuck because we're trying to fix all of the problems that don't exist. And
Right.
if you really think about it, coming back to the argument with somebody, you're having an argument with somebody, maybe it's your husband or your wife, and you're thinking, you're not really just watching the words come out of their mouth. You're not just hearing the sounds that they're making. You're not aware of it's actually what's going on. You're busy thinking of all of the problems that are going to happen if you don't get this conversation right, if you don't win this argument, if you don't resolve this argument. And so you go along to counseling or therapy for an hour and you talk to somebody, and it's all about, I'm trying to convince the other person that what I'm saying is true so that they see what I'm saying.
Right.
You're not actually there in the experience at all. You're in a story about what you think might happen. And that person that you mentioned, that's exactly right. Your brain is there to one of the functions of the brain is to ensure that you're safe. Because when you're safe, you're going to survive, obviously. So it has to find every possible problem. Now, if you're walking in the forest and there's a lion behind a rock, then it can see that. But it has a listen and a watch, and it says, are there any other dangers? Is there a snake in the grass? Can I hear or see anything else? So your brain is totally focused on finding every single possible problem that exists in that present moment. That's perfect. You don't want it to miss the snake in the grass if it's there.
Right.
But when you start telling stories, in other words, when you start using words, then your brain is going to go, what possible problems, not just here and now, but could happen? Because your brain, there is no concept of the future. Your brain, because the future doesn't exist, of course, it only exists as a present experience. But your brain doesn't see that it could happen in the future. It sees all these potential problems that it needs to solve right now before it can allow you to focus on what you're supposed to be doing, which is being happy, living your life. Because the way humans used to live, and we've seen this with tribal groups as well, who haven't quite got caught up with the story trap, is most of our time was spent just enjoying life. We didn't hunt for food very much. Food was very abundant, going back more than 12,000 years until something changed and made food scarce, which we created, by the way. But anyway, food was abundant, so we didn't need to spend 12 hours a day trying to create food for ourselves. It was abundant. So most of the time, in the way we're designed, which was like other animals, most of the time we're just supposed to sit around and relax and play and enjoy life and not be stressed. And sometimes we're supposed to get out there and be super productive and chase after and get the food. And for that, we need a big burst of energy in a short period of time. Chase the buffalo so we can eat it. And then if we happen to see a threat or a danger, we're supposed to deal with that. And that's in a short period, a short burst of time. But now we're in this constant state of seeing danger all of the time. So our brain is constantly in this stress state, which was only ever designed to be used very occasionally, if at all. So the way to get out of all of this is to realize two things, really. This is the way your brain's supposed to operate. And when you actually allow it to operate, it's going to bring you everything you need to actually have a great life, to have not necessarily the things you think you need, but the things you do need. And so many times this happens to people. They end up doing something they never dreamt they would do. They're busy working on achieving a goal or having a certain type of person in their life, and they end up something completely different. And they say, and maybe we've all had this experience, say, wow, I'm glad I didn't get what I thought I wanted. This is far better, but I didn't know this is what I wanted, but something must have known. Maybe God knew, or somebody was guiding me or had my best interests at heart. Absolutely right. That's biology. So the first thing is to recognize that you actually have it built within your biology to have a really fulfilling, rewarding, problem-free, struggle-free, stress-free life. That's the way all of nature and biology is set up. And the second thing to realize is the only thing that's stopping you is these imaginary stories that you're telling yourself that are keeping you feeling there's danger out there when there isn't. And that stops you from living instinctively and traps you in what I call the story trap.
Is that why maybe I'm a little bit biased because of my podcast, and also I think that the things that you focus on is also a lot of what comes into your life, right? And I remember spending a lot of times in this narrative where I thought that like men today don't want to commit, they don't want commitment, they don't want to get married, they don't want this or that. And that in the past year has been dramatically challenged for me in many ways, more a lot because I have been surrounded by more men and seen that there's that's just false. I've like, and also in all of these conversations that I've had on my podcast, I've been talking to so many men where that's just not true. But I still guess I believe that there are societal factors, there are more kind of generational shifts that are happen throughout the years that will allow for natural changes to happen. An example of this can be that there was more, it became more normal, or should I say less frowned upon, to get divorced, for instance. Therefore, there's a lot of children who are a result of divorced parents, and because of that, that also kind of morphs and impacts the way that people think and believe in love. So going back to what you were talking about love, because I mean, that is a topic that I'm very interested in understanding, is that what is it that is going on in people's minds then that are stopping them from committing or opening up for love? Like, do you see this as some sort of a societal problem, or yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the excuse me, the basic problem, if you like, is that the more we try and figure stuff out, the more
Yeah.
confused we become. And we keep thinking, all I need to do is change the meaning or change my interpretation or learn something new that will be the truth about this situation.
Right.
But all that does really is keep you stuck out of your instinct, because the natural way, and I've done a lot of relationship work too over the years. That was really what got me started in the online world, as I do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching. And it
Mm.
always struck me that people trying to heal their relationships, because it was
Yeah.
primarily helping people avoid divorce, and
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
is. I still have programs and coaching for that. What really struck me was people were spending so much time trying to figure out why things were the way they were and how to change it. And it just kept them stuck. They'd go for years to counseling and try and say, well, maybe we need to do a different approach, or maybe I need to try this, or this isn't true, or something else. But here's the thing about a relationship, it's actually much simpler than that. You just meet somebody and say hello. You don't have a story about them. And the people I've noticed in a great relationship versus, the few who are in a great relationship versus the many who unfortunately are struggling, and they often end in separation, is that the people who've got a really great relationship don't really have many stories about it. They just are there. And so if the other person acts in a certain way, they're like, oh, well, that's the way they acted. They don't say we need to be together for the next 30 years and we need to have all these things happen and we need to be happy. And if they do that, I'm going to be really upset. Or if they don't, and if they do that, I'm going to be really happy. All those are stories. That's not living instinctively. Whereas if you really think about it, when you first meet somebody and you're attracted to them, you don't have any stories. You're apart from there's something that feels really interesting about this person. There's something I'm really attracted to. You're not even saying it to yourself. You just feel it. You're just naturally drawn to that person. And often your behavior, when it's working well, is you're not really thinking about it. You're just acting in the way that feels right. And the problem comes in is when we start to create stories about what we should do, what should happen, what people are like, what relationships are like, rather than just accepting everything moment by moment for what it is, and knowing that you're going to respond in the best way, the most appropriate way
Mm.
for you and for everybody else, but you are responsible for you, that's going to make you thrive. And it might be, that relationship only lasts a week, or that relationship lasts 20 years. But, the people in the best relationships don't get up in the morning and worry about how am I going to make sure this relationship lasts the distance. They get up in the morning and subconsciously say, whatever is. If it ends today, if one of us feels that, it's not right anymore, that's fine. We'll move on in life. Not a problem.
Right.
In other words, I trust my instincts. They're not necessarily saying all this, but this is what they're doing. I trust my instincts that I'm going to be okay. They're going to be okay. There's nothing to get all up and tight about, as opposed to having all these imaginary problems in your head about what could go wrong and what terrible things might happen to you if that relationship doesn't last, or if it doesn't go in a particular way, or if that person doesn't respond in that way. You don't have any of those things. So the secret is really to realize those things, all of those thoughts in your head, whatever they are, even if they're positive thoughts,
Mm.
they're blocking you from living the way your brain is designed to operate, where it instinctively knows the right thing for you to do. And all spiritual traditions, all religions have said this throughout history. Have faith, believe, trust. Do not worry
Right.
about what's going to happen.
Yeah,
It's all going to
it's
turn
true.
out fine. They're not, and they're telling you how your brain works. Your brain operates on instinct. The intelligence that runs through all of nature and keeps all of nature working perfectly fine, thanks very much.
Yeah.
We're the only ones who have problems.
Yeah.
If you just allow it to do its job, it's going to make sure all of the things that are supposed to happen happen. Now, they're not going to necessarily be what you, as I say, appear to be perfect, or you might go, well, I didn't want that to happen, or that's really bad that happened. But, when I lost everything, became homeless, I could have said, and I did, this is terrible. I'm so stressed. And I did feel stressed. It was awful. But, looking back on it, it was one of the best things that ever happened. But
Right. A
so
lot of people say
when
that.
we,
Yeah.
because again, it shows that just telling stories about things, it separates you from your experience of life. It stops your brain from actually getting you to do the things that you need to do to be your best.
Yeah. Wow, a lot of things to chew on here. It's funny because I'm very receptive to a lot of this information, and I think one of the reasons, or as a result, I'm getting more and more conversations like this. And I mean, I'm also seeking it out, having a whole podcast, of course. But I love the way it tickles my brain because I really have to yeah, reflect afterwards. Like I always have to like sit and think of like how this applies to me. And I know, of course, that I mean I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. I love telling stories. So of course, like I understand that that's just an aspect of my personality that doesn't necessarily make me like wrong. But I do
Yeah.
really find a lot of truth in, because I'm a Christian myself. Like I identify with Christianity a lot, and I read the Bible every day. I pray every day, and I do feel that the most joy and the most peace I feel is when I just let go and let God, as cliche as that might sound. And
Mm.
I know that it is the times in my life when I am trying to force the outcome or speak in definitives or really like have like a set, like dead set plan on how things have to unfold, that it's also when I feel the most stressed out and unaligned, if you will. Yeah. And also disappointed because, like you said, it doesn't generally turn out the way that we think that it will turn out. And we're kind of in our own way sometimes just trying to force every outcome, not kind of taking into account that while my life is going on, there's so many parallel realities going on that also would have to align with all of these things to kind of like fit together. And things happen. Sometimes something happens and it takes you quote unquote off course, if that's how we choose to view it. So I recognize that in all of what you're saying. I can see that there's been times in my life where I've definitely been very steadfast on how I want everything to turn out and have a whole script of how to get there. And then one thing happens and then everything changes and now I'm disappointed. But the less expectation I put on tomorrow, for instance, the more present I am today, and thus more peaceful I feel in the present. So I definitely recognize that there's a lot of truth to what you're saying here.
Well, it says in the Bible, do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, and wear. It will all be provided for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't say you have to earn it, you have to work for it, you have to figure out how to get it. It's all going to be provided for you. And just like it is, as the Bible says, in the rest of nature.
Mhm.
Birds don't struggle to, this is a wonderful
No.
thing I learned by being a sailor. I'm in nature so much, and I see how nature, struggle is not the default mechanism. Thriving is the default mechanism because it's the most biologically efficient, energy efficient way for anything to survive, is by putting out the least amount of struggle and the least amount of energy. So
Mhm.
birds don't struggle to find food. And it says in the Bible, how much greater are you than birds? They're not struggling. Why are
Mhm.
you?
Wow,
And the only
right.
reason we're struggling is not because we have to. I'll give you another quick example if I could,
Please.
because this is a real clue about how this works. I said that for most of human history, all of the biological records show that we didn't struggle, that humans were actually really healthy. And we have this idea that cavemen lived these brutal and short lives. If you look at the biological, historical, anthropological evidence, it wasn't like that at all. They lived longer, apart from childhood, there was a high infant mortality rate. But if you
Mhm.
survived that, you lived longer. They had none of the diseases that we have today, like heart problems, diabetes, cancer. They're virtually unknown. People were taller. Their brains were on average 11% bigger than our brains are now. They were
What?
more, yeah. And there's no evidence of conflict or war, or people lived happy, fulfilled lives.
So
But
what?
something,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
not what we've been told. But it's like most things we've been told. You do a little bit of research, dig below the surface onto what we believe, and you find none of it's true. So, so here's the thing. But 12,000 years ago, all of a sudden, and literally within a couple of generations, people went from this healthy state to a really unhealthy state. And wars and conflict and disease suddenly became really prevalent. What actually changed? Well, we took up agriculture. We started to build cities, and we
Mhm,
started to plant crops, whereas
mhm,
before we were just nomadic hunters eating animals. And people again have thought, well, the reason why we did that was because we were running out of food, or the population increased, and we were suddenly short of food, so we had to try and find ways to, get more food because the animals were all running out. It's actually the opposite. There was more abundance than ever before. The population didn't increase at all. It was a perfectly balanced. It only increased after we went to this civilized way of living. Instead of being nomadic, we
mhm.
started to live in towns and cities. And
Right.
we started to work instead of a couple of hours a day, every couple of days, finding some animals to catch. We started to work 12 hours a day, toiling in the fields,
Mhm.
planting crops, struggling. Now, why would we take up a life of struggle, working far harder, having diseases we never had before, having wars and conflicts? Because the other thing we had to create as part of that was hierarchies. We had to create rulers telling other people what to do. We had to have ownership of property. We had to protect ourselves. Someone might steal my crops or whatever. So we had to build cities and towns to protect ourselves from enemies, which we never had before. And so the question becomes, if we didn't have to do it, because it wasn't about population increase, it wasn't about lack of food, and not every society did that. Many others stayed for thousands of years, still living a nomadic life and not having this unhealthy way of living. It wasn't because we had to, it's because all of a sudden we thought we had to. So instead of saying, I have enough now instinctively for what I need,
Right.
we developed language, and we
Yeah.
started to say, I
More.
can see a story of I might not have enough in the future. So I can see that I've got enough now, but I might not have it. So I need to prepare for the future. I need to
Yeah.
sacrifice the present moment for the future. So instead of enjoying life, I need to dig some fields up and tend some crops and hope that in a year's time I'm going to have enough food. Again, we created a story. We stopped living from instinct and we started living in stories about what might go wrong. And our
Yeah.
brain started to say, all of these things might go wrong. Somebody might attack you. You might get sick. You might lose everything. So you need to spend your whole life preparing to make sure that none of those things happen. A life of misery.
That
So
was a beautiful full circle moment. Yeah, no, you're right.
it's all in the history books. It's all about what actually happened, and it's all biological. We're instinctive beings. We're designed to trust and run on our instincts. It's what the Bible tells us to do. It says, do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself.
It does say
It's
that.
all over the place. That's what
Yeah.
faith is. What is faith? Can I just
Faith.
say one little thing? When people
Yeah.
say, I have faith, when you really feel faith, when you really feel trust, when you really let go, what do you let go of? You let go of words. You let go of thinking. You just suddenly get in the state where you just know. There's no words there, there's no language, there's no prayer. It's just this knowingness
Yeah.
that something is right, that you are right. All the words have gone. That's our natural state. That's the way our biology is designed. But we don't do this, therefore we don't have this experience very often where things are flowing and things are clicking into place, because we're constantly holding back, telling ourselves these stories about what could go wrong, and we need to plan and we need to figure out and we need to know, and all these things which the Bible says, no, you don't need to know. You just need to trust me. You just need to believe and have faith, and it's all going to work out perfectly.
Wow.
Dummy, why don't you do it?
This is beautiful,
Hey.
Liam. I mean, you're saying so much incredibly wise stuff, and I can't help but, like, of course, as you're talking, I'm kind of seeing how it all relates in my mind, of course. I mean, naturally, that's what one does. But I mean, this is remarkable. I got a very audible reaction when you said, you just know, like there's this feeling of just knowing. And I've
Hmm.
been saying that a lot lately. And you don't know this, of course, but so I recently moved back from the US to Norway, and I have been spending the last 5 years trying to come to the US and be able to live there permanently. That was my sole purpose. It felt like I had experienced a sense of belonging in the US that I'd never experienced in Norway before, and I was so gravitated towards it. And there was a point last year where I just had what I can only refer to logically in my mind as a calling. And it was that I was all of a sudden going to move back to Norway, which hadn't been something, it wasn't my plan. It wasn't what I was trying to do. But I knew by this point in my life that surrendering to God and trusting that instinct, that was something that would benefit me. I had learned that the more I just listen to those instincts as opposed to doing what I think I should do because it calms my nervous system somehow, probably because of familiarity, that it was actually beneficial. So I decided to quit my job and move back to Norway without really knowing fully why. I had a theory as to why, which was like I was going to get married and have kids in Norway because that made more sense than the US. And I was single at the time. And I thought, like, yeah, now is as good as time as any to go home. But I asked my family when I came home, I was like, I don't want to have a whole lot of talk about like me having to apply for all of these different jobs. I don't want to apply for them. It gives me anxiety thinking about it. I love what I'm doing when I'm doing my podcast and when I'm tapping into my creativity and when I feel like I am just getting downloads from the universe or from God or whatever you want to call it. That is just coming into my head and I get to either talk through it or write through it. And that's when I feel the most aligned. That's the best word that I can use. Simultaneously as peaceful. Um, but I love everything that you're saying when it came to tie it back to why, like when you just know, because I asked everyone to just trust me with this, trust me with the next bill, trust me with the next payment, trust me that like whatever I'm doing right now is the right thing for me and for the quote unquote collective. And I just had to, it's just this knowing. There's no tangible evidence that me kind of surrendering to all of this quote unquote safe pillars, which is financial income and a stable, safe job. But the truth is, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen next week. Like planning for all of these things, like you said, is bracing for the unknown when we have no evidence of actually knowing that what we are bracing for is actually true and will happen. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting everything that you're saying, and somehow I feel very validated that somehow I'm on the right track. I think that's how it feels.
Well, you know, the interesting word you've used several times is how it feels. That's the
Yeah,
key. Knowing and love and faith and gratitude, they're all feelings that
yeah,
you can't explain them, you know, and we keep trying to explain them and but even when we in the act of actually explaining them, we weaken them and we know it's not really what it is.
yeah,
So that experience that we're having is that's the way we're biologically designed to be. And the great thing is you don't need to think far ahead because the way God, if you like, or whoever it is, intelligent, set up life to work is, and it's taken millions of years to get to the point of everything works perfectly efficiently. It's all designed around what's the minimum amount of energy that can be used for the maximum amount of result.
right.
Because conservation of energy is everything for survival. Because you might, you know, say you can't find food for a week. You need to find a way to conserve your energy so that you don't, you know, die, not only do you don't die for lack of energy, but you have enough energy to find the food when it's there.
Yeah,
So everything is designed to be super efficient. And if you look at nature, a bird or an animal, it doesn't hunt all the time or it doesn't look for food all the time. If it needs some food, it just, you know, birds are fascinating. Oh, there's some food and I need it and I eat it. Doesn't, you
mm.
don't see fat birds apart from ones that are in, you know,
Yeah,
influenced by
caged.
humans. Then
Yeah,
they just do what needs to be done. So we're designed to do that as well. So the most efficient way for God to show us what to do next is just to show us the next thing to do.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
every single little thing. You don't need to plan and say, well, I wonder if I want to go somewhere. You just start to take little steps and you go where you're supposed to go. You don't need to figure it out all in advance. That's not biologically efficient. God or nature is designed to just show you the very next thing to do, and you just do it without thinking. Obviously, thought has a place to play. It doesn't mean you just do stupid things impulsively.
Right.
They're usually based on fear, which is a different, we won't get into that because that's not really, well, it is an instinct, but it's the misuse of
Mm.
what triggers your fear instinct is a story, is a thought, usually triggers it the wrong way. Because the only time you're supposed to feel fear is when something is there in front of you to be afraid of, not something to worry about.
Right.
So the
Oh
beautiful thing
God.
is it just becomes a process of taking small, constant steps, being in the
Yeah.
flow, not worrying and not having this expectation about where things need to go.
Right.
One story just really quickly I like to use is imagine if you were a loving God and you want to experience life through your creation, which I believe is what God does. God,
Yeah.
being everything, can only experience itself or himself or whatever through its creation. So God experiences itself through us. So obviously it wants a good experience. It wants the best experience. So what is the best way for it, if it is a loving God and wants the best for us, what's it going to do? It's not going to give us what we want, what we say we want. It's going to give us what's best for us. So for instance, if a child is saying it's 6 o'clock in the evening and goes to its mother and says, please, can I have an ice cream? And the mother says, well, we're having dinner in 5 minutes, but please, I'm begging you and I'm asking you and I'm believing in you and I know you love me and I know you want, and I'm really visualizing getting an ice cream. So please give it to me. I'm praying for it. The mother is, or the father is still going to say, it's not what's best for you. And you don't know what's best for you. But I do, being a loving parent, I do know what's best for you. I'm far more intelligent and got more experience than you. So it's not going to give you what you think you want. So this idea of going around trying to figure out what you want, why not just allow God or the intelligence to show you what you're supposed to want, what you're supposed to have? And it's only going to do that one little step at a time. And you're going to end up in places you never expected, never thought about, probably, and it's all going to be good,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're right. Oh, I needed this reminder. I think I need to re-listen to this episode a couple of times. I mean, it's always something so intriguing because we're so habitual and so patterned, and we're also so shapeable in a sense that, or maybe a better word is we're so
We're
uh,
triggered by thoughts. That's the
yeah,
problem.
yeah. I mean, we're so imprintable because everything that is happening in society with all of the expressions that are everywhere now, everyone is expressing themselves. Everyone has their kind of, or a lot of people have their existence online, for instance, and we are impacted by it because we observe it and it has its way of shaping the way that we think and we feel and we act in society. I think it's all morphing us, and without this very specific awareness, you're just flowing with it unconsciously and not
Well, it's
really
because it's
understanding.
because we've been taught from the day we were born, this is the way
Yeah,
it works.
exactly.
But that's a little bit like, imagine if you came out of the forest and you saw a motor car and you'd never seen a motor car before and you didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And somebody said it's a motor car, and what it is, it's a machine that'll get you anywhere you want to go.
Mm.
And then they disappeared, and you thought, well, I wonder how it works. And you looked around, and there were a lot of other motor cars that with other people, and they're all standing behind them, trying to
Mm.
push the motor car along.
Mm.
And and you thought, well, this is the way it works. And so you started to push it, and you didn't really get very far, and you didn't make any progress. And it was a lot of effort, and you were getting exhausted. And you looked at, and people said, that's just the way it is. That's the way it's designed to work. It's a lot of effort, and you have to put in your effort. But if you want to be, what you need to do is you need to be more motivated and you need to build up your muscles. So I can sell you something. You go and do a course on building up your muscles or being more motivated or being a positive thinker. And then you'll make more progress because you'll be able to push it a bit harder. And then someone else comes along and says, no, it's the shoes. You need better shoes. You need more technology that's going to help you push the car along. And then somebody comes along and says, what is everybody doing? It's not supposed to be difficult. It's been built specifically so that it's not difficult. It's been built to take away the difficulty. When something's difficult in nature, it means something's going wrong. You're doing it wrong. We see this in something else. If we have a problem with any machine, we say we must be using it the wrong way. We don't say it's designed to have problems and
Oh,
designed
wow.
to be difficult. It's designed to make life easier. So that's the way we've all mistaken what our brain's about. We think that thinking is going to solve the problems. We just need to think more. We need to figure it all out. And and if we're not doing what we say we should be doing, well, we need to think about how we can get ourselves to do more. But it's just a misunderstanding of how we're built to be.
Yeah. So wow, I mean, all of this is super fascinating, and I'm really grateful that you're here to share this with not only me, so it can trigger and tickle my brain, but I'm sure my listeners as well. And I'm really grateful for that. I think just one last thing I kind of want to understand more about you is, of course, I know that you became homeless after earning millions, and I'm sure that was probably the biggest breaking point or the pivotal moment, if you will. But what was like, did you have a very specific moment where there was something someone said and that was when everything changed for you, or was it more like this gradual journey of really wanting to understand why you got into that situation to begin with?
Well, I started off wanting to understand why I got into that situation, but it wasn't until
Yeah.
years later that I understood why I got into that situation.
Okay.
And it's because I was trying to eliminate every possible problem I would ever have in my life so that I could feel safe and secure. So I
Yeah.
had to earn lots of money. And when I'd earned lots of money, it was never enough. I have to earn more money. And so I started to do things that were the wrong decision. And I started to do things out of stress and trying to force things to happen. I remember employing people. I had salespeople in particular. And I knew there were so many times when I employed somebody and I knew they were the wrong person for the job. And
Mhm.
had this feeling inside me, this person is not the right person. It doesn't, and the warning bells were going off, but I still employed them. And I
Huh.
said to myself, I'll make it work. All right, they're not necessarily good at, because I was desperate to find somebody. And because my brain was saying, if you don't employ this person, you'll never find anyone else. They're the best you can do. People do that in relationships. They say, well, I'll
Right.
have this relationship. It's, a lot of red flags, but they're things that can be fixed. They're 80% there or 90% there. And those little things that are annoying, well, we're going to make this relationship work. How many times have we hear people say that? I'm
Yeah.
going to make this relationship work. So I used to do that all the time, override my instincts, because we have that quiet voice within us that tells us when we're making a mistake. But we still make the mistake and we still do the wrong thing because we convince ourselves that we can fix any problem, that all you need is motivation, all you need is information, all you need is determination. So I went from that state of complete and utter stress, and the problem's just building because my decisions weren't good decisions. They're
Hmm.
all based on force and my brain telling stories about you have to try and get more all the time. You have to, build up more security. So I went from that place, and that's why it all collapsed. It was just too many wrong decisions all came together at once. It all just became too much. So it went from that to no decisions at all. And the breakthrough moment, I guess, was that rock bottom where I said, I give up. I just don't know what to do anymore. I'm too tired. I've used all my mental energy trying to figure it out. I've tried all of these things. I've tried to contact people or send emails or look online and do. None of it's working. I'm just going to go and have a lie down. And then, I remember I got this idea. Oh, I know somebody who's got a retail business. I could go and do some phone sales for him. And I just picked up the phone and said, can I do some phone selling just on commission for you? I don't know where that idea came from. So I started doing that, and it was nothing I wanted to do. It was horrible. Going from running teams of salespeople to being a person in a back office on a phone in a little room. But I did that. And then one day I was out in the store, and there was somebody I hadn't seen in 25 years. And he recognized me before I recognized him. And he said, hey, Liam, how are you? What are you doing? And I said, not very much. He said, there's an opportunity for a business just come up near to where I have my business. You'd be perfect for that, because he knew my background. Why don't you come and set up a business next to mine? I said, well, only one problem. I don't have any money. Oh, well, I don't know where the money came from, but a few months later, there I was back in my own business. But it wasn't because I planned to have it. It wasn't because I
Mhm.
tried to figure out. It wasn't even necessarily what I thought I wanted. But I just kept following little things that just people came along and
Right.
ideas came along, and I did nothing big, just all little things, and
Yeah.
it all just fell into place. And I didn't think too far ahead. And this is what we do. We have a goal. This is why goal setting doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to have a goal. Your goal is supposed to make the most of this moment. And then when you make the most of this moment, the next moment's going to show up. Boy, that's how our biology is designed. So I went from that state of trying to force everything to allowing things based on the right thing is going to show up at the right time. And even if it doesn't appear to be the right thing, it will be. And it wasn't a belief, it was just a knowing. It's a different way of, you're not living on belief, you're living on knowing. And of course, I get caught out a lot. You know, I catch myself with my stories and I feel all anxious and worried about something. And I think, what am I worried about? I'm not worried about what's happening right now. I'm worried about what my brain is telling me could happen. It's found some thing to be afraid of, some story. It's telling some words rather than me experiencing what's actually here and allowing my brain to respond to what's here.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm still a work in progress too. We all are, obviously, because we can't just get rid of language. We can't get rid of thinking, but we can recognize what it's good for and what it's not good for and work our life around that.
Yeah.
Or try to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great summary. I appreciate that. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you want to share with my listeners, Liam?
Oh, how many more hours have we got? No, I mean, no idea. Entirely up to you. I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
unless you can think of anything, but.
Sorry, we keep overlapping. I don't know if I'm like a second behind you or something, if it's lagging or something like that. But I'm really grateful for everything that we've talked about, and if the opportunity allows itself, I would love to dive even deeper into maybe specific topics in a different episode, maybe even more about how we can be more open to love, like how we can learn to untangle limiting beliefs and be, I guess, more aligned with our brains. I think that's what I want to figure out how I can be. So if you want to come on my show again at a later time, I would love that and dive even deeper into those specific topics. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really appreciate it, Liam.
Thanks for having me. It's
Yes.
been an honor. Thank you.